Okay. Thank you everyone for your lovely singing. It's so nice to be grounded down into that. I'm going to start today with a quote from C.S. Lewis. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully round with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglements. Lock it up safe in the casket of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love at all is to be vulnerable. So last time I was here, I told my fish story from when I lived up on Haida Gwaii. Some of you might remember it. It was about how shortly before my wedding, which was up on Tohill Road, on the traditional territories of the Haida people, which is about 750 kilometers north of here as the crow flies. If you go by the road, it's much further. And in addition to the 60 pounds of fish that we were able to catch, and I'm happy to show you the photo later for those who didn't see it last time, people also gave us a bunch of live Dungeness crabs to share with our guests who had come from off-island. But that was far from all that we were given by this community up by Tohill Road. So about a third of our wedding guests were locals from Haida Gwaii, and they brought so many things to make our wedding work. Everything from sound equipment and DJ skills to wild strawberries to put in the gin, sea asparagus and venison, a curler for my hair, beautiful handmade signs to help lead our guests to the wedding site, which was right in the middle of the forest, like no maps capable of taking you there. You just had to kind of feel your way. And we had got permission from the family who had built this really incredible wedding site. And again, I can show you a picture later if you'd like to see it. And it was on their land up by Naikun, which is the place where the Haida say that human life began. And so instead of gifts, we asked people to donate to the school lunch program that was run by the matriarch of that family, or to the totem pole that has now been raised up near that site. And our wedding also happened to take place the same weekend as the small town closest to the wedding site, a town called Nasset, held only its 4th ever Pride event. And I'll show you a photo later of the rainbow crosswalk that they painted for it. In the same way that about a third of our wedding guests were locals, about maybe a third of the Pride guests that year were off-islanders who had come for our wedding. And they were excited to see that rainbow crosswalk, that symbol of acceptance for queer folks all over the world. So it was such a special and really, you might have slides? Oh, you want to just show them? Okay, that's fine.
This is the crosswalk. Would you like to show the other pictures?
No, it's okay. I can show them later. Thanks, Doug. So seeing some of our oldest friends and some of our newest friends partying together, coming together to make our event a celebration of love, that was such a sacred moment for me. And it wasn't really so much about romantic love, although maybe it was about that too, but also about loving community. No, it's okay. Yeah, it's all good. You get the idea. So that photo to me represents love in community, which, as Bell Hooks says, is the realest kind of love. So I'm someone who actually finds it hard to ask for help, but I had to get over my aversion to asking for help pretty quickly, living in a place like Haida Gwaii, because when we first moved there, we stayed in this furnished apartment. And we decided to extend our stay, but we had to move. And the apartment that we moved into was totally unfurnished. And now, in a place like Haida Gwaii, in the town that we lived in, Dajingids, you can't just go to the store and buy a mattress or have one shipped to your house. Those options just don't exist there. Most stores will not deliver a mattress to such a remote location, and there's no mattress store on the small strip that has a credit union, a hardware store, and a grocery store. But I managed to furnish this apartment beautifully just by asking around. First, just amongst the friends that we had there, and then I would literally just ask people at the grocery store. I'm not joking. I would be in the checkout line and I would say to the clerk something like, hey, I need to find a mattress. Do you think anybody might have an extra? And if I said it loud enough, people in line would also just chime in. So before too long, I had multiple offers of mattresses, couches, tables, chairs. I was just, had an abundance of furniture for this new house that we have. And the thing that was so striking was that in the culture of the island, this did not feel like a strange thing to do. And nobody treated it like it was out of the ordinary. So, we'd been there for about 2 months. Most people already knew who I was. They had a sense of our situation. It was nothing at all like if I had been at Loblaws in downtown Toronto, near the condo where my children were born a couple years later, and if I asked the person in line next to me, hey, do you have an extra mattress? In the culture of downtown Toronto, this kind of request would isolate you, but up on Haida Gwaii, it connected you more. So you might think that in a small community like Haida Gwaii, where belonging is so densely woven, it would be hard for new people to get into it. But what I discovered there was that when the web of belonging is really strong, it's not like circled wagons. It's more like an inclusive circle that adapts as it expands, which is what John Ralston Saul says Canada is at its best. An inclusive circle that adapts as it expands. So in his book, A Fair Country, Telling Truths About Canada, John Ralston Saul explains how our best ideas about multiculturalism, like that we can be a mosaic, not a melting pot, or that we can be an inclusive circle that adapts as it expands, these ideas come from Indigenous culture. And he talks about all the deep and basically subconscious ways that Canada has been influenced by Indigenous ideas and practices of welcoming and inclusion. So to the extent that us having a unique national character up here, north of the 49th, is not just a myth, it's about these kinds of differences. So our reconciliation with the truth that belonging in Canada is in large part about adapting to Indigenous ways of knowing. We've got an attacker at our gates, on our southern border specifically, in a way that most of us have never experienced before. And I think it's making a lot of us want to circle our wagons. What I hope is that we remember that it's the openness, the inclusiveness, the adaptability, the welcoming of interdependence that make our border worth defending in the first place. I hope we don't lose that as we get into the kind of competition that could make us feel very vulnerable and therefore very self-protective. So in this moment, when we feel so threatened by a former ally that is choosing isolationism, how do we instead continue to deepen into the reality of interdependence, our seventh principle as Unitarian Universalists? How do we continue to have the courage to swim against the tide of rugged individualism that defines American culture and that's always had a large impact on us here, but its waves are crashing into us even more strongly at this moment? But how do we choose to deepen our commitment to community? And that's my understanding of what we're all here to do, to rebuild a society in which connection and care can flourish, in which we really live respect for the interdependent web of existence of which we are a part. So my favorite piece of feedback that I've ever received on a service, ever, was someone who told me, I really didn't like that part. And it really didn't work for me. But I could see that other people were enjoying it. And that's actually a remarkable piece of maturity, to recognize that not everything is for us as individuals, but that those things could still be in service of community. When I was first entering seminary, this is back in 2017, I found myself explaining what Unitarian Universalism is over and over. And I showed the 7 principles, which I had on a little card in my wallet, to so many people. And a lot of people would essentially just kind of shrug and say, well, everyone agrees with these, or, I mean, these aren't very controversial. But I don't actually think that's true. I think lots of people disagree that we're part of an interdependent web of existence, or that we should respect the inherent worthiness and dignity of all people, our first principle. And we could see that in our politics. And we may be thinking about that as the federal election comes up as quickly as it is coming. But even for the many of us who do agree, actually living by these principles is hard work. So we strive to practice justice, equity, and compassion, as our second principle instructs us to do, and we constantly fail. But we just have to fail better and keep trying. After every Sunday service ends, a new one is waiting for us next Sunday. And there are also many choices that we have made and that we'll continue to make as a community that show our lived commitment to understanding ourselves as part of an interdependent web. So we have weekly convenings where we share in joys and concerns together, a practice that we don't make space for anywhere else in our society. And these are a tribute to our interdependence. We commit, as Unitarian Universalists, to sharing joys, concerns, and pains in the sacred hope that all who need this kind of love and connection will find it here. So as Unitarian Universalists, we are people of the same faith, a faith of covenant, not creed, where we embrace the sacred task of loving each other despite imperfections, across difference. Through commitments to each other and to this community, we are creating an island of care and connection in an increasingly isolating culture. Now, this little island of community is not nearly as remote from the rest of the world as Haida Gwaii is, but it can be, for you and for all who seek it, a refuge, where you can create the kind of change you would like to see in the broader society. We can set an intention, and I invite you to set this intention while Attila plays the meditation following the sermon. We can set an intention for this community to welcome vulnerability, to offer comfort, to be filled with loving kindness, and to celebrate interdependence.